This is the CreaseCast.
Welcome to episode 133. I don't think this will be part one or part two of the CreaseCast. I think it's just going to be one gigantic episode because we have a lot to talk about. There was some news that dropped today. It is Tuesday, the 27th at 5:53 p.m. Pacific time. I have just got home from work. There was no news when I left work, but then I got home.
Cody?
My day sucked because it ran really long. But then I got home and there was a lot of news, which kind of overhauled how we were going to approach this episode because, as you guys know, as our loyal listeners who we appreciate and love more than anything on the planet, not even my wife. No, I'm kidding. I love my wife. We had a lot to cover because we finished our recording for our last episode midway through the first round of the entry draft, and we missed the second day of the draft and the events of Sunday and Monday. So we're doing a lot of catch up. So we weren't really anticipating today or yesterday when it came to the Canucks news cycle. I think a lot of us were pretty reserved and expecting it to be a pretty slow roll for the Canucks, just how the Pettersson and Hughes contracts were taking so long to get done that it just wasn't going to happen, and everything was going to probably take place after the free agency deadline on the 28th, tomorrow, Wednesday, the day with which you are reading this. So all of that changed today and yesterday, mostly today, really. So I think to really just kind of accelerate everything, because we don't have a draft panelist. We don't really know anything about the draft picks, so we're not going to waste anyone's time going over, round 2 to 7 for a bunch of guys we have no idea about.
We'll get an expert on for them. We'll get an expert on for those people.
If they're good. If they suck, we don't care. If you're really interested, though, you can check out loyal listener and mustard on watermelon aficionado Chris Faber's Canucks conversation, where he talked to several of the Canucks recently drafted prospects. Really wonderful episode. Lovely to hear a bunch of people talk about it. I think they had Alexa, I'm going to pronounce her name wrong. It's like Protac or something like that, who basically talked about the Swedish Elite League or SHL prospects that they had drafted.
Yeah. No longer the Swedish Elite League. It's just it's
Swedish Hockey League or whatever.
It's just the Swedish Hockey League now.
Yeah. So
SHL.
I urge you to listen to that episode if you really want some deep, great information on the Canucks draft prospects. So I'm going to quickly summarize them for you, and then we'll get into that. So the Canucks picked 41st overall Danila Klimovich. He is a Belarusian who spent most of the year in the Belarus second-tier league. He's apparently trying to get signed so he can either play in the QMJHL or straight into the AHL for Abbotsford, which...
Apparently he wants to make the Canucks. He just wants straight up thinks he can make the Canucks, which, hey,
power to him. If he can't do it and he goes to the AHL this season, hell yeah, dude.
I like your moxie,
the brash, the moxie, the boldness. Most of the prospect guys I follow are there's no way he's even ready for the AHL, and I'll believe them. But whatever. If the kid wants to come stateside and he has the confidence to do it, power to him, bro.
Yeah,
that's all we know about him.
Go for it.
So
man.
that's awesome. Not third round, because they traded the third round. They didn't actually pick until the 5th round again, and they took a goaltender. Your boy Ian Clark, Lachlan Irvine. A pure Ian Clark pick. Other shout out to David Quadrelli's piece in CanucksArmy.com where he interviewed Ian Clark. I bet you read that. I bet you printed it and posted on your walls because it's
I did retweet
unreal.
It for sure.
It's so good, and
this was
I'm sure
before.
Quads loved that conversation with him.
Oh yeah.
So and also shout out to Quads because he actually named the goaltender they picked, Aku Kenvuo, as one of the guys they could pick up in the 5th or 6th round. So shout out to Quads for nailing that one.
Yeah.
Also,
we have our smart people in this market in terms of prospects, and we're pretty blessed in terms of the prospect coverage we get out here. It's great.
Yeah. We've hit our heads a few times, so we're not as smart, but we're trying. We're trying for you guys. Anyway, also
I had an animal fall on me recently. It was tough.
It was literally out of the Looney Tunes. It made the
I was chasing a bird. I was chasing a bird down a desert road, and then an animal just fell on my head. It was a tough day. tough Sunday for me.
That's why I don't trust birds anymore. So fifth round, they also took Jonathan Myrenberg, a defenseman, right shot defenseman, which, as I'm sure you guys know, the Canucks really need. In the sixth round, they took another right shot defenseman in Hugo Gabrielson. They also took their only Canadian player in the draft, Connor Lockhart. And then finally, in the seventh round, they traded, they didn't trade, but they traded one of their picks to move up or to, traded out of the draft entirely, because they had two to begin with, and then they went down to one. And they picked Lucas Forsell, who, as far as I know, is like a really high upside pick. The Canucks Conversation guys, they were talking pretty highly about his upside and the fact that he had already played in the men's league in the Swedish Elite League. So that's a little promising if you're a Canucks fan. Yeah. But aside from the Canucks picks, one of the main talking points of the actual draft itself, unfortunately, was
right after we recorded.
Literally, we finished recording. We were feeling really good about our episode because, we had the Oliver Ekman-Larsson emergency episode. Then we kind of finished off with everything else. And then shit hit the fan in a very bad way because the Montreal Canadiens closed a very slow and pretty boring draft by selecting Logan Mailloux with 31st overall pick. For those that don't know, Logan Mailloux was arrested in Sweden, where he played last season for engaging in sexual activity with, maybe a minor, whatever.
It was basically, just so we don't get sued. It was basically,
actually, it's not allegedly.
Well, it's not the allegedly so much as it is just making sure we get it right. It was, he was charged in Sweden for sharing around illicit pictures of a girl that he had sexual relations with to
that he had taken
without
her consent.
Without her consent. Without her consent. He was charged, and he did get punished.
He got fined, I believe.
He got fined, yeah. So he was
because he was a minor. Technically, it was only a fine. It wasn't like a jail time type situation.
Yeah, but he was fully charged and found guilty of what he did. So there was a lot of outcry in the scouting community and the draft community because the allegation or the assault and his crime came to light ahead of the draft. And basically what had happened was a lot of teams, like the news was, number of teams have declared Logan Mailloux is on their do not draft list. Logan Mailloux kind of put himself forward and basically renounced himself from the draft or recused himself from the draft, which you can't actually do. You cannot it's not like the NBA where you can declare for a draft or pull yourself out. You're in it or not. And I'm sure this will change. If you are 18 and a hockey player, technically you are in the draft as far as I believe.
You don't have any out. So even after recusing himself, and as far as we know, the victim herself had said Logan Mailloux made like a piss poor effort to try and apologize or atone for his actions. Mm-hmm. And so you can look at his recusement and attempts at wanting to better himself over the next year as maybe hollow,
and the fact that he doesn't mention the victim at any point in that
doesn't actually apologize to the victim at all in this video where he recuses himself. It's kind of
Agent was talking about cancel culture and basically blaming and making it very clear that the victim, trying to basically push the blame on the victim for trying to and saying stuff like, "Oh, the victim just wanted to ruin his career." Makes it very clear that as far as I know, that they do not believe he did anything wrong. That's not when a person believes they've done something wrong, they're not usually saying stuff like that. So
usually
take that as well.
So after this video came out where he was trying to save face and recuse himself from the draft, the Habs took a look at the video and said, "We don't care. We think he's worthy of a first-round pick." A lot of scouts actually said Logan Mailloux wouldn't be even taken until the third or fourth rounds. He's not that good. But the Habs had no pick until I think the fifth round, kind of like the Canucks situation. So they were just like, we'll take him with whatever we got. Fuck the consequences. Fuck our fans. Fuck women in general. We do not care about the victim. We care about our team and on ice impacts only. And then after their pick, which basically, I mean, it fucked up the entire draft panel. Like of course, the NHL Network panel in general had side panelists like that were actual women, people of color that could, maybe broach the topic. But the main panel itself was 4 guys, and the 4 men in question were just jaws dropped, have no idea how to even broach the topic of conversation. Props to them for actually calling out the Habs on how disgusting the pick was. That I can't imagine that was easy to do on the fly, because I don't think any of them were expecting this pick to happen at all this draft, let alone in the first round.
Yep.
After this pick was made,
immediately after,
like this is a 10-minute span to close out the NHL draft.
Yeah.
The Chicago Blackhawks made the 32nd pick of the entry draft. And if you do not know, I think we've talked about it several times on this podcast, but the Chicago Blackhawks are in the midst of a giant investigation of a sexual assault cover-up dating back to the 2010 Cup run of the Chicago Blackhawks, in which their video coach allegedly forced a player to engage in sexual acts with him on threatening his NHL career. He then moved on from the team and
was allegedly given a good recommendation by the team to a high school after this happened. The team covered it up. The team covered up what happened, and then again allegedly gave a good recommendation to a high school. That's what's being discussed right now, I believe, in court. Yeah. And which later led to him being charged in Michigan with as a registered sex offender for assaulting a minor. For assaulting a minor. And like, there are so many other things we could say about that thing that's going on. But again, we just there is, and then
providing context for base. If you didn't know what was going on with the Blackhawks, this is the team that followed the Montreal Canadiens in this draft. What they're currently embroiled in. There's tons of discussion right now with the fact that, this is probably the biggest story in hockey. Stan Bowman is involved because this was brought to his attention by their director of player personnel at the time, John Vincent, who said this video coach needs to be fired. He needs to be reported to the police, and allegedly Stan Bowman and their management staff, which includes people like Kevin Cheveldayoff, the GM of Winnipeg Jets, and
Mark Bergevin,
who is the GM
just drafted
of the Canadiens, drafted Logan Mailloux. So the fact that these people allegedly knew about this sexual assault and covered it up and did nothing to help their players, support their players, blamed their players, encouraged an environment that shamed this player for being a victim of sexual assault is absolutely disgusting. And so what do the Blackhawks do when they're making the 32nd pick overall? They roll out 8 women as part of some kind of initiative to, promote women within the workplace, and let them make the pick for them. And
make a very clear, like Stan Bowman said something like, we're not a perfect organization, but we're trying kind of thing. Like a very clear, we are using these women as a PR shield for what we've done.
It was the most transparent shield you've ever seen in your entire life.
Good for those women getting hired, getting hired in hockey. Great. That's great. That doesn't excuse you from all the other stuff you've done. That does not give you, that is not a, oh, we forgive you now.
Yeah. I'm sure none of those women worked for the organization back in 2010. It is a shame that their accomplishments have been marginalized and basically used to shield Stan Bowman as he faces unfathomable amounts of criticism from the hockey community. And they make their pick, and that closes out the draft.
Yep.
And it's just a really sour way to end the draft. And then just a few days later, I believe this was Sunday, on the topic of allegations of sexual assault, the Canucks decided to buy out the contract, the final year of Jake Virtanen's deal. Contract. For those that don't know, I'm sorry for how grim this opening is, folks, but
this is a very grim opening.
Jake Virtanen faces allegations of sexual assault dating back to a training camp back in 2017. He allegedly,
we don't have to get into it. We don't have to get into it. It's more just about there's apparent, He's in court for it right now. It's not it's what it is.
Yeah, the entire story broke in the most like ugly way. Someone had screenshotted a story from an Instagram group for victims of sexual abuse. I believe it was Survivor Stories Instagram, something like that. But it was a private account that had no right to be publicized, and it was. And after that, it kind of blew up, and it turned out there was an ongoing civil suit that caused Jake Virtanen to be taken off the team in the midst of it. And here we are today, where he is no longer a Vancouver Canuck. Good riddance. So long as this civil suit is ongoing, he should have no place on an NHL team. That's just like the legal process. If the NHL wants to prove that it actually cares about women, if it cares about sexual assault, cares about the culture that it's trying to change, then they shouldn't let any single player in the midst of a civil suit for sexual assault be allowed to sign with another team. Bar none. That should be the simplest rule imaginable to affect as soon as next year. I was so sorry to message you and let you know that apparently the Carolina Hurricanes were interested in signing Jake Virtanen despite the current lawsuit that he's embroiled in.
And a certain other player.
Tony DeAngelo, as far as we know, no allegations of sexual assault against him, but just reportedly like an awful teammate, racist, just terrible human being. This is a bad look for the Storm Surge team. Hockey is your second favorite.
Yeah, not anymore.
They are not.
Look, hockey has done. Look, there are some things that in the last year that I think that at least it seemed like hockey was making a conscious effort as a culture to better themselves and to improve. They just took a shovel and undid all and just dug themselves into a hole they can't get out of again real quick. It only took about a weekend to do it. It's just sucks. It just all around sucks. It makes you not like the sport that you cover. Like it really does.
It really does.
I love hockey, and that's why we talk about it, and both of us do. We both love hockey. That's why we talk about these things on the show, because we love hockey enough so much that we want it to be better, and we standard and hold it to as high a standard as we would anyone else. This sucks. Stuff like this sucks, and I hate that we're starting this episode on such a grim, crappy way of talking about just some of the worst things that possibly happened. But this is necessary.
It needed to be.
If we just swept it under the rug,
we didn't want to do the 31 thoughts thing and only devote 6 minutes to something that needs to be talked about more and needs to be addressed. So that's why we decided to not make it like a cold open or like close the show with like a little blip mentioning what happened over the weekend. We wanted to open our show, really get into just the awfulness that was the end of the draft and the context surrounding the Canucks and how it relates to them. But after all of this negativity, there was some actual Canucks news to get into.
A lot of Canucks news.
Man, like a lot of news to get into. The Canucks came out of nowhere. They buy out Virtanen. You kind of got the feeling like, okay, they might have to buy out Holtby if they want things to, clear up on their books.
They at least have to move them.
They have to move them. They got to do something. Then all of a sudden you start hearing all these rumors that people want the Canucks to retain salary on Holtby's deal. They don't want to take the full freight, and they're going to have to get the Canucks to pay to retain a bit. And suddenly it's like, oh no, buyouts are back on the menu, boys. And Brayden Holtby gets bought out this morning after a bunch of speculation that he might just be a Canuck again because they can't find a dance partner. And then that spurred some goalie mania, which I'm sure for you was wonderful because you're a goalie guy. I've heard.
Yeah.
And on top of the Holtby buyout, we then got, who was it? Martin Jones bought out. We had Marc-Andre Fleury traded for an ECHL player. We got 3 goalies moved like instantly, like within an hour at like 9 a.m. All of a sudden it was just like, okay, there's the standstill in the market for UFA or pending UFA goalies or expiring goalies. And once again, the Canucks are a trendsetter. May not be for the entire league, but they set it for a few teams. And man, it sucks to see Holtby go because he's such a cool dude. He's got his turtles, brings them to Canada. I mean, here. Wasn't his turtles getting stopped at the border like an omen of what was to come?
Maybe a little bit. Now in hindsight, yeah, probably.
Yeah, pretty clear.
I thought it was nice. I thought it was a cute little story.
It was very cute. It was like, oh, he just cares about his turtles.
Yeah, and especially because it's like, you're a cat. You have cats.
I have cats.
I have a couple. My family, we've always had only really dogs. And someone's like, we're worried about getting our pet turtles, our tortoises. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I should say tortoises because they are land creatures. No, turtles are mostly water creatures. Tortoises are land. I learned that from the whole Holtby turtle thing. I had not known that before. But yeah, like you go from like this whole, I mean, just literally in the last 24 hours, not even that, has been basically watching the Canucks just take a big ol' undo button to everything that happened last offseason. We had after last offseason, we had Brayden Holtby, we had Nate Schmidt, and now they are both gone. They're both very gone.
Yeah. It's kind of because the 2020 offseason was, oh my God, they might lose every single UFA that they have. They might lose Tanev,
Rob
Stetcher,
Williams,
Markstrom.
Will live forever in infamy. They're not going to lose all of them, are they?
They can't lose all of them, right? They lose all four. They extend or they qualifying offer Gaudette and Virtanen, and then let everyone else go. They signed Schmidt, they had Schmidt fall in their lap. I don't want to say they went out and got Schmidt because Schmidt fell in their lap. We've talked about this on this show before. Vegas said, do you want Schmidt at his full cap hit and maybe for like a third rounder 2 years from now? And the Canucks said, well, sure, and landed on their lap. Without that deal, that 2020 offseason is a complete shit show. It is even worse now in hindsight, but it salvaged what was just a complete train wreck in terms of asset management. Now, here we are. Not even a year later. This is 10 months later, right, where the two guys that were signed, Schmidt and Jake, both bought out. And then Schmidt, the one piece that stood to be the savior of their 2020 offseason, he wanted out. And you know how badly he wanted out? He had a 10-team no-trade clause, and he waived it to get out. And where did he go? He went to fucking Winnipeg for his entire deal for the next 4 years. That's how bad he wanted out. He waived his NTC just to get out of Dodge and start fresh. He didn't even want to see what the team was going to do with Conor Garland or Oliver Ekman-Larsson or whatever. He just said, get me out. So The saving grace is gone. The Canucks have hit Control Z and decided to basically kick the can down the road a bit and start again. They are redoing their 2020 offseason. And what they have right now is bigger cap commitments to Conor Garland and Oliver Ekman-Larsson for the next 5 to 6 years. And they now need 2 defensemen, a bottom 6 center and winger. They need a backup goalie. But at the very least, this Schmidt trade opens up considerable cap for them to actually do that. Before, you were looking at $20 million to re-sign the RFAs that include Elias Pettersson, Quinn Hughes, Jason Dickinson, and then, a bunch of AHL guys that don't really matter. Oh, and Garland. That's a pretty tall task. With $6 million back on the books because Schmidt is gone, now they're cooking a bit. They can now probably comfortably sign Pettersson and Hughes at whatever they want and still have enough left over to accomplish what they need to. It's just about the optics of signing those bottom six centers and wingers and the backup goaltender to deals where you're thinking, okay, they made efficient use of their money. Mm-hmm. If they sign a backup goaltender to a dollar total that just amounts to the same amount as Brayden Holtby would be making this year, then it's like,
that's a clear error.
What have you done?
Yeah.
If you've re-signed a contract equivalent to Roussel and Beagle, then you've gone nowhere again, and you've basically just like given up a bunch of first round picks and whatever to kick the can down the road, which they kind of have. But if you're efficient with your money that you've just freed up right now, then at least you can understand and feel a little bit more confident that at least next year they have an idea of the direction they're going. So let's break this down. Let's break this down in pieces here. First things first, the Conor Garland signing hit the news waves first. So they signed him to a 5-year, $24.75 million contract. It's $4.95 million per year for 5 years. And probably the most impressive thing, and like the sign that maybe Jim has decided to start learning on the job after 7 years, he didn't include trade protection. There's no movement clause. There's no trade clause. He is tradable, easy to move, a good scorer, a good rate scorer, and it's a pretty decent cap hit for a 25-year-old who's scored at like a top line rate for the last 2 seasons. So your thoughts on the deal and Conor Garland's no move protection. No move protection.
So with Conor Garland's deal, I think it's actually a pretty safe deal. Like overall, it fits. Like 5 years is a bit, I am worried a little bit about the fact that this is a guy you traded for. You've yet to see him play in a Canuck uniform. There's a little bit of a fear on that per se to a certain extent, but like for what they paid for it, like I'm not going to worry about that too much. Like,
Fair.
$4.95 million AAV is very manageable for the most part. The fact that, you mentioned there's no move clause, there's no trade clause. That's good. That means and it's not a contract that is so hefty that it's unmovable. Like it's not an unmovable contract. If things don't work out the way that you hope they will. Yeah. It works. It definitely shores up your top six with some decent scoring. There's a lot to like about this contract overall, I think. I don't know how you feel like in terms of like, do you worry at all that like just because he hasn't played, do you worry that this ends up like being a big problem, or is like I just thought I'd pose the question, like it's more devil's advocate because I don't feel like it will, but I don't know, maybe you think different. I don't know for sure.
Well, I paused for concern a little bit when I'd heard some folks on the radio saying, Conor Garland's like great around the net. He's great in the greasy goals area. And I'm like, the Canucks have been touting how good they are at, scoring greasy goals since like Eriksson was signed and Verbata was signed. And how many times did those guys have successful seasons as greasy goal guys?
Right.
Verbata had one and then it fell off. Eriksson never worked as the greasy goal guy, even though that was his bread and butter for his like entire career. Yeah. So when I hear stuff like that, I'm like, oh no, have they just committed $5 million to a guy whose specialty is something that the Canucks aren't exactly adept at executing in their strategies?
Greasy goals are important. Like there's no doubt about that. Like there's a huge, like not every goal is going to be an absolute highlight reel, amazing snipe from like the circles, right? Like Elias Pettersson isn't going to do that every single time. And that's not why he's a successful scorer. Yes, he scores some very nice goals, but he's also very good at going to the net and getting the garbage goal every now and then. Yeah. Like every good hockey player can get the garbage goal, is not going to always just score something magnificent. So you do need players that maybe they never do score that highlight reel part, but they never get the highlight reel plays, but they'll be a consistent, regular guy who chips in offensively all the time, no matter when you need them. They're dependable. It seems like Garland is that type of guy. I mean, the Coyotes are a team that have been starved for offense for a long time. Their whole thing has been the fact that they don't win a lot of games by, blowing you out by any stretch. A lot of their games are very close. They're very low scoring. They're tight defensive games. Garland seems to be able to play in those types of games and be able to come out of it with 40 points a year, which is difficult. Like that's a difficult thing to do. So you bring him to a team that is a little bit more structured for a type of more offensive firepower. He might end up doing better than that. He might, or worst case scenario, he might do the same. Like it seems like this seems like a pretty safe bet in terms of what he is capable of and what he brings to the table. But yes, there is a little worry that maybe, are they bringing in a guy again to do something that he was not designed to do? I mean, it seems like that's not the case
or
here.
Changing what he was good at, right? Like the Sam Gagner thing,
else.
Right?
Where
they said this guy can score, 40 points in the season and he's a fourth line center. That's what he must be able to do is play matchup roles. And it was like, no, he plays 13 minutes a night and he sits on power play 1 because he's like an expert power play guy.
Right.
And they didn't sign him for that. They instead signed him because they're like, he can be our matchup guy without doing any homework.
They've done that many times before, especially on defense with like Eric Goodbranson.
They do that a lot with the defense.
I always pick out. Yeah.
When they traded for Oliver Ekman-Larsson, our former editor, Daniel Wagner of Past Dabulis, had retweeted that quote from Jim Benning where he said, I don't know why Oliver Ekman-Larsson's plus minus has been so rough the past couple of years. And to a lot of people, that's just like, oh, plus minus is stupid. Who cares? And they're right. Plus minus is stupid. Who cares? But the context of the quote is he doesn't know why the defenseman he just acquired, who cost $7.06 million for 6 years, he doesn't know why he's been bad the last couple of years. When you're trading for a giant contract, wouldn't you want to know why they've been bad? And if it's something you can fix, why would you agree to something? Like, you don't buy a car without test driving it or doing your due diligence and figuring out like the consumer reports. You look that shit up, man. You can't just like invest in a lemon and then be like, oh, darn, the lemon's bad. I can't believe this happened. Who knew?
Hey, this thing's broken. Why didn't anyone tell me it's broken? It's like, yes, we did. You were
due diligence is one of the things that's always been kind of like lost on this team when it comes to defensemen, and like the Eric Goodbranson thing. I'm sure they said, or Florida said, yeah, he's a tough guy. He's great locker room, really handsome, big body.
Really handsome.
You're going to love him. And then that's all they heard. And we're like, oh, great. Like they didn't do any thinking like, hey, what's he like against like elite competition? Is he good at scoring? Like just no due diligence done whatsoever. So when it comes to the Garland and Oliver Ekman-Larsson thing, where the Arizona Coyote system may have benefited Garland because, there are always those tight games. They encouraged him to, go around the net, battle really hard, go for the rebounds and stuff like that. That's kind of always been other players' things on the Canucks. So he might not have the same kind of role. So he might not be scoring at the same rates as he ever did. So he's going to have to find a way to adapt his game. That's a bit tougher to do when you're a 25-year-old forward who's only been in the league for like 2 years, like barely has like 200 games at this point. And for that reason, I'm like, this deal might work out or shake out in a way where Conor Garland regresses and doesn't play up to his 4.95 price tag, but Oliver Ekman-Larsson does, because instead of playing this kind of like chippy, kind of close, tight game where you're, kind of just like banking on the 1 goal win, he might actually thrive in this scenario with a Travis Green system that's kind of like, we're just going to score as many goals as possible. Don't worry about the defense. We don't ask Tyler Myers to do it. We don't ask Quinn Hughes to do it. We just ask you to score as much from the blue line as possible. If you can replace the point shots from the blue line that Edler offered, that's all we need you to do. And he might thrive because of it. So there's obviously tons of inherent risk in the deal in general. But I don't know, just like a hunch I have is that Ekman-Larsson is actually going to do pretty good in his first year, and Garland is probably going to struggle a bit. But it'll be like inverse, where Ekman-Larsson over time kind of declines further.
Oh, I see.
But Garland will figure it out and become better as the deal ages.
I think that's possible. I think that's possible. I think with Garland, though, one thing we're not factoring in is the fact that he's probably going to get a shot with Bo Horvat right out of the gate. And I think that will be good.
Right.
Bo Horvat's thing that I've always loved about the way that he plays and the way he is as a forward is that he is generally, like, maybe he's not the flashiest guy on the ice, like, ever, but he's very good at getting the most out of the wingers he gets. And sometimes that's not a lot just because of some of the a lot of the time the wingers have been a little bit suspect. They haven't always been the best. He hasn't always gotten the benefit of, say, like what Pettersson does, where Pettersson always is going to get the first line wingers on his side at all times.
Yeah.
Horvat sometimes a lot of times has gotten stuck with kind of this is the placeholder. Sorry, we're going to find someone for you later. Please be patient and kind. And it seemed a couple times like they found him, like they found Pearson, which was good success for quite a bit of time. They found Toffoli, who worked out in the short term that he was there. Last year, they found Höglander, who ended up being a great fit along Horvat's wing. And you hope that's going to continue into the future. I do think that from the looks of things, looking at the Canucks top 9 right now and looking at who the projected line matchups are going to be, Horvat playing with Höglander and Garland getting a chance to play with those two, that might actually be a pretty solid fit. They each have different elements to their game that I think complement each other pretty well. Like, I think Höglander is a guy who has no problem getting into the dirty areas, going for the puck and fishing it out. Like,
that's what they kind of have throughout their lineup now, right? Like, I know a lot of people kind of say like, oh, all the people complaining about like the cap and the long-term outlook for the team, like they're just whining and complaining. And it's like, I don't think any person is saying the team hasn't drastically improved.
Oh yeah, by all means, they're much better now than they were a couple days ago. Like
Ekman-Larsson is going to be an improvement on Alex Edler, regardless of how it shakes out. Yeah. He can. I mean, his skating might not be great, but did they watch Alex Edler last season? In the short term, Ekman-Larsson's a huge upgrade on Edler. He's going to provide you tons of minutes. And Garland, he's going to be infinitely better than Jake Virtanen or Zach McEwen or
any of the other guys.
Any of the other
Jimmy VC, Travis Boyd, who's going to hit the open market.
Mark Michaelis, you know what I mean? Like, it's going to be an improved roster next year. I think they're top 9. If Podkolzin is everything as advertised and is immediately an impactful NHL player next season, I'm not banking on it, but if he is, then their forward group is honestly legit top of the league, because
a very good group. Yeah.
They're going to have so many guys on that forward group that just battle hard. And that's kind of, you can, we've said for how long, what is the identity of the team? Kind of seems to be missing here. And then you see the acquisitions of Conor Garland and Jason Dickinson. You're like, oh, I kind of get it. They want battlers. They want guys that are going to be battling along the boards, going for pucks. They're not going to be the Nikolai Goldobins or whatever of the world. Who
remember Pettersson's first line mates in his first ever regular season game were Louis Eriksson and Nikolai Goldobin. Now you're going to tell me that you're going to now put Colson, if he comes in for his first NHL game, in theory, his line mates are going to be Jason Dickinson and Tanner Pearson. That's
two capable veterans to steward him along. That's
a damn good line. It's not a killer. It's not going to be world ending, but it's
but if that's your third line,
pretty good. That's better than most. That's better than most will have, at least out of the gate, especially in the Pacific Division. There's not a lot of teams that are going to be able to match that on their own third lines. There are some teams like Vegas that can do it. Not a lot of them out there, though. You're going to have a hard time line matching to a Podkolzin, Dickinson, Pearson line. That's a good group, and that's a good group to usher.
That's a really good matchup line, right? That's a good it might not score a whole bunch, but Dickinson, doesn't score that much in general, but I mean, that's a high work rate line, and that's something you want to see in this lineup.
And he'll get his power play opportunities, which is going to be huge. Like they might actually have a power play too that's a little formidable this time around, just with some of the guys that they have at their disposal.
Compared to last year, right?
Compared to last year. Well, you know what? Like, you want to talk about individual improvements and how the team looks better now than it did a couple days ago. That's a good one. Like the second power play unit suddenly looks much better. Like, you're going to have, and that's not nothing. People will think that that's kind of like but like, that's a small victory. But hey, remember last year the Canucks had games where, like, every time the second power play unit stepped out, you're like, okay, well, they're going to kill a minute or two, and that's it. Like, you were just like, well, we're not going to get scored on for the next 40 seconds, and that was the best you could hope for. Now you're actually looking at a situation where maybe you don't have to sit the PP1 out for a minute and 30.
Yeah, and a minute 40, and
then send the second out to just kill time.
And maybe you're actually looking at out.
Yeah, maybe you're actually looking at a scenario where your second power play unit could actually do just as much damage in their own right. Like, that goes a long way. That goes a long way to winning games.
Yeah,
so
that takes off a lot of pressure on power play unit 1.
Yeah, and sometimes huge. that might have been the problem in some cases. It's just like that fact of, if we don't score
too much,
like not that they're saying this necessarily, but like just in that mindset of, you have to score because power play 2 is just going to be out there to kind of kill some time. That's a lot of pressure to put on a group. And I think sometimes, like, especially with power play 1, my biggest concern with them was always that they definitely looked like worried. Like, they looked a little bit concerned about what would happen if things went wrong on that unit a lot of the time. There was a lot of like gripping the stick a little too tightly, passing the puck way too much, not enough getting shots on net and just trying to get something going. There was a little bit of tentativeness in the way that they approached it. Now you're looking at a situation where maybe you're not so tentative. Maybe you don't mind taking the risk as that first power play, because you know that power play 2 is going to come in and be able to give you just as much damage.
Yeah. So on top of the Garland signing, the Canucks, of course, bought out Holtby, which spurred like all the chaos. There's rumors that apparently Yaroslav Halak is being tied to the Canucks as a potential backup option. I thought like you couldn't negotiate during this time with like pending UFAs, so it'd be tampering, wouldn't it?
They've changed the rules, remember, in the last few years. So now the last, I believe it's the 2 days before free agency, it might be 3. You are allowed to speak to pending UFAs as a team. Just to that was kind of the rules. Like, okay, 3 days before you're allowed to, I believe, talk to the pending UFAs, and that's why a lot of contracts are pretty much done the second that 12 deadline comes up and they're ready to like put ink to paper. Yeah. So the thing with Holtby, like, this is the thing. First of all, yeah, we already kind of mentioned it. We're like, I'm a little sad that he's leaving. I think he clearly underperformed based on the contract they signed him to. That's undeniable. Yeah. That's undeniable. Like, he had and
he had a lot of money coming to him in this year. So
yeah, he had a lot of money. There was a lot of money. They couldn't move him. From what the looks of things, buying him out, like, just looking at the buyout clause, yes, there's it's only $500,000 this year that they owe him. Next year, or at least on the cap hit anyway. Yeah. Next year it's going to be 1.9, so that's going to be a little bit tougher. That's going to be a little that's going to be a little bit tougher to manage. But even then, like, as far as I'm concerned, that's still okay. Like, that's not complete. That's not a killer. Like, you can work with that. You can work.
The buyout amount still is less than the Luongo recapture penalty, but it's close enough where you're like, you've essentially just kind of pushed Luongo recapture another year, which is kind of lame.
You had Virtanen's in there as well, and it's 550. Like, that's next year. It'll be 2. So this year it's only 550,000 that they owe in dead cap. Yeah. Next year it'll be 2.4 million, which is, again, not great but manageable. You can work around that. The thing that the interesting part of that comes up with this is just the question of, was it worth it for them to buy him out and move that contract along? Would it have made more sense to just kind of stick it out for one more year as the 1B? I'm going to say, like, and I'm the one posing this question at the end of the day, but I'm going to say that this was probably the right call. Like, I mean, it was time, like, Holtby didn't want to be here again. From what we can tell, it did not work well for him this season. It looked like he was making strides at the end of the season, which is kind of tough because it definitely looked like he was getting better as he went. But it just wasn't enough to keep him around. He clearly was ready for a change of scenery already. And there was just no takers on the cap hit that he was at. So I get that. So I think moving on and trying to find somebody new is probably the right thing, especially because right now what you need more than anything for Thatcher Demko, considering he is fully signed, ready to go for the next 5 years, is you need a guy who can reliably come in and take 30 plus games from him and give your goal and give Demko the night off when he needs it, which is going to be often. You can't, again, I've said it 1,000 times on the show. You can't have a goaltender playing 65 plus games anymore. You just can't. You will kill them before the playoffs start. It's not a great way to send your goaltender in. You're going to send him in cooked before a puck is even dropped in the postseason. You need a guy who can take at least 30 games a year and give your goalie a rest. Jaro Halak, if he's the rumored guy that's coming, is perfect at that. That's what he did for the last so many years in Boston behind Tuukka Rask. Tuukka Rask was guaranteed the number one guy, like undeniably number one goalie. All they needed Halak for was to come in and give them reliable goaltending on the nights that they needed to give Rask an extra time or a breather, and he did it. He had some. I believe his numbers were incredible.
He's had really good numbers in Boston in general.
Yeah,
it's just obviously like a situation of like what kind of caps hit do you think a guy with numbers as good as he's got in Boston over the last few years is going to command coming to the West Coast to play for Vancouver? Because with Brayden Holtby's buyout, like you don't want to spend the exact same amount that his buyout cost on another backup goaltender, because then it's like, well, why didn't you just ride it out?
Yeah, you might as well have just taken the risk and gone another year with Holtby.
So that's the only question we would obviously have at the CreaseCast is like, what kind of deal or what kind of cost is a Halak gonna command? Because it doesn't make sense if it's anything higher than like 1.75 mil.
Yeah.
It really doesn't.
1.7. Yeah. I think like I can see, like,
I think his current salary right now is 2.25. So it'd be like a huge pay decrease.
I mean, this is a guy who is, I believe he's 36. So he's not he's an older guy. So you might be able to get him on a cheaper deal just based on that.
You can get him on sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. You can get him on a 35-year-old plus contract, and you can load it up with signing bonuses, because signing bonuses on contracts for 35-year-old plus, I believe you can bump them by a year. So if you're like, hey, Halak, we're going to sign you to a league minimum deal for salary wise, but there's $1.5 million in signing bonuses, then you can spread it out or delay it by a year in case he, hits whatever signing bonus minimum it is.
I mean, just looking at his contract history, I mean, he's taken last year, the contract before he took with Boston, like the first one he took with Boston was $2.75 million. It dropped to 2.25 last year for the one season. I could see a scenario where maybe you give him like 2 years and it's like close to maybe like that 1.5. And maybe I'm biased just because, again, I'm a goaltender. I'm going to give goalies I'm going to vouch for my goalie guys as much as I can. But at the same time, when it comes to goal, you should be willing to pay a premium for good goaltending. Like if there's one place you don't want to necessarily nickel and dime, it's on goaltending depth. Because you need somebody who can take over and play a good amount of time. I don't think he's going to get more than about 2. I don't think his cap hit is going to come in anywhere like under, like close to like that 2 million range again. But if he comes and says, he's only going to come for like say 1.5 or something, or a little bit above that $1 million range, I can work with that. Like that's something you can work with, because again, you absolutely need serviceable goaltending. You can't come in and you cannot take a guess on who your backup. You can't take a risk on who your backup for Thatcher Demko is. It's got to be someone who you're guaranteed to get good goaltending out of. So you gotta sometimes you might have to pony up a little bit more to get the better guy.
Well, especially in this offseason when the team is committed so heavily to undoing their mistakes of last year, they basically said, we're not cheaping out. We're going back to all in. So you can't get to this step and be like, we're going to cheap out on the 1B and hope it works out. They need a stable vet that can actually provide them 30 games. They need to get right shot defensemen that are actually good, which is going to be the biggest task for this team to do this offseason, because their record with identifying defensemen is very poor. And of course, the two best defensemen they've ever identified, that, one of them fell in their lap, but of the two best defensemen that they've ever had on their right side, Nate Schmidt and Troy Stecher, guess what? They're both gone. So,
yeah, you're in some trouble. So you gotta find some replacements, and your replacements got to be cheap. They got to be some cheaper guys. Which is, look, again, teams are finding success now, finding cheaper contracts and not going for the name brand. We say it all the time. Don't go name brand. You go for the unknown. You go for the cheaper one. It's going to be cheaper and just as good. Right. He is going to be probably just as good and come at a much cheaper cost. You're moving on from Nate Schmidt, and probably at the right time. It wasn't clearly working. It clearly wasn't going to work in Vancouver. And now you're looking at a situation where maybe he's replaced with Luke Schenn, possibly coming back, who we love here in Vancouver.
Luke Schenn was so in that year when Luke Schenn was kind of made his resurgence, the San Diego Gulls, what's the coach's name of the Gulls that year? Dallas Eakins, yeah. Now Dallas Eakins, had that rough year in Edmonton. Basically, everyone was like, his NHL career's toast. And then he comes out of nowhere and is like, I'm going to rehab Luke Schenn's career. I'm going to do all these favors for him, get a bunch of nice PR. He finally gets an opportunity with Vancouver. And what does he do? He parlays 20 games, not even, into a full-on back-to-back cup run with Tampa Bay. And then he's like, I'm good. I think I can come back to Vancouver now if they'll let me. And of course, Vancouver's like, yeah, you guys Schenn had really good chemistry with Quinn Hughes, surprisingly. He looked really good, surprisingly really good on a pair with Quinn Hughes. I mean, that's the Quinn Hughes effect in general. But just the fact that this guy who is everyone's been shitting on since he was drafted, just had this immediate chemistry with this kid that he'd once met at a rink in Toronto when he was 7. That's great. And so if he comes back, that's awesome, because I think everyone in this market would be totally fine with it at any price. Everyone after that season he debuted. I think everyone wanted Luke Schenn to resign, and everyone was mad that they couldn't get him to resign. So it's really funny that 2 years later, Canucks fans are usually, we don't want the older guy now that he's 2 years older, but Luke Schenn's universally in Vancouver,
everyone's for real. Let's go. I got Schenn fever. Hell yeah. We all got Schenn fever.
So that
you know what it was? And you know what it was with Luke Schenn that I think is that's been a rarity, especially in the Benning era. He was one of the few low frill guys that came in and actually came exactly as advertised.
Yes, exactly.
I think I don't remember who put it this way at the time, but somebody said at the time, Luke Schenn is what is to the Canucks what they thought Eric Goodbranson was going to be. He is exactly that. He is hard-nosed, gritty guy, makes a bunch of hits, and does a pretty decent job at not being a minus in his own end. He's a decent shutdown defenseman for what he costs and what his role is. He's not going to take a lot of minutes, but he's also not going to be a huge, he's not going to be, you're not worried when he steps out there that that a puck's going to end up in the net. He's pretty good about that. Now you're talking about him coming back 2 years later after winning 2 cups. You worry maybe they're, according to Rick Dollywall and Donnie and Dolly, he's only the idea, potentially the contract, if this is happening, it's 2 years around, I think he said around $700K to $800K. Hey, if he wants to come for that, hell yes. All aboard the Luke Schenn bandwagon. This is exactly what the Canucks should have been looking for this whole time, was guys like this where Luke Schenn used to be, I guess, name brand to a certain extent. He was, I believe, a first-round pick at the Leafs back in the day, and he just didn't pan out for. Again, they drafted him based on, and they drafted him based on something that he was not capable of doing for them. But now after years in the league, he's gotten to a point where now you know exactly what he brings, and he does something quite good. What he is capable of doing is actually quite a huge asset, and being able to not like play low minute, play as your third pairing, and be a relatively reliable third pairing defenseman is nice, is great. You need that. You need that to win. And yeah, literally, like there was the whole situation. I think it was Kevin Epp, who I believe was Virtanen's agent, if I'm not mistaken, maybe someone else's. On Dolly, Bummers, right? Talking about how the Vancouver media and the fan base is too negative, which is like we don't have time to get into.
No, we do. I'm going to cut you off right now.
You know what? Agents are going to do what they can to keep their clients happy. So I always take what they say, especially on media things, with a grain of salt to a certain extent. Like they're always going to be out the best. Like they're the lawyers for their clients, so they're always going to say something, even if it's not inherently true. I'm going to take what he says with a grain of salt on that one.
I have zero time for agents, other media from different markets, anyone that says players don't like the markets or fan bases that are mean on Twitter. Because
which is also just not true.
All they ever talk about in season or postseason is how fucking mentally and physically strong hockey players are.
That's right.
Freaks of nature.
That was a banger.
No one can ever beat them. They are the strongest. Yeah. You will never meet an athlete as tough as hockey players. You cannot say that shit and then be like, actually say on a radio interview
on Twitter
that my client Conor Garland didn't like Joey Shitbag 126 criticizing my client's skating ability or whatever. I have zero time for that. Get over it, okay?
A little bit. Not that Conor Garland said that. That's
not that he actually said that, but that's like the completely hypothetical agent or out of market media criticizing Vancouver fans, and it's like, Canucks fan base is just like, sorry, the Canucks fan base, like whether like you like Jim Benning or hate Jim Benning, you're on the side of I am so invested and intelligent when it comes to this team because I am invested. I care about this team's success. And sure, there's some guy who disagrees with my beliefs and how the team should be run, but we both know like the cap implications down the next 8 years.
We've both chosen to spend our time spend all our free time worrying about this. So that's not something. And again, we're not going to do the whole my fan base is better than your fan base sort of thing because that's pointless.
No, but I have no time for the argument that I do agree that Canucks Twitter or Canucks fan base is the worst according to Elliot Friedman.
That is really
such
not.
A crock
that's the other
shit.
Person. Yeah, it's not true. It's completely what it is people don't like that we're informed and people don't like that we actually know what we're talking about sometimes. And I mean that in the royal we. I'm not just saying the two of us. I'm saying in the royal we are more the Vancouver fan base as a whole is more informed with what's going on with the team than other fan bases are. And in some cases that's just based sometimes that's based on geographics, sometimes that's based on the fact that they're not the biggest team in their market. That it just depends. It entirely depends. But don't sit here and tell me that players are more interested in going to say like Arizona because it's quieter. They're not. You and I, if they were, they would have won a cup by now. Like that's just how it goes. Like, and I'm not singling out Arizona.
Conor Garland literally said in his like availability to with Sportsnet 650 that he loves how involved or engaged the Canucks fandom is, and that it's like wonderful to see how like critical they are. So,
and hey, maybe that's just, even if he's saying that just because he's new and coming in,
who cares?
Who cares?
And also he said like he doesn't care what people say, which is probably the overwhelming majority of hockey players where they're like, I don't care if you think I'm shit. I'm not. I'm an NHL player.
Yeah, I am better than you. I am in the 1% of good
$6
hockey
million
players in the world.
to suck ass in the NHL.
Hockey players should have better things to do than worry about what random Twitter guy, including us, says on Twitter. Like they just should. They just should have better words. And I don't buy that for any reason. Like there are guys, like some guys who have stuck here for the majority of their careers and have been huge parts of the team and had, and even sometimes had a hard time on their way out of town, not necessarily because of the fan base, but sometimes based on the way management or ownership treated them. Like, and they'll still have great things to say about the fan base. Like Roberto Luongo has every reason to hate the Canucks fan base for some of the stuff that some people did on his way out the door and talked about how bad he was. And yet, does he mention them? No. Whenever he mentions the Canucks, he's like, I love the fans and everything. I love being in Vancouver. They were fun. And as anyone knows, Luongo's not a sugarcoater. He's going to tell it like it is. He's always been that kind of way. Yeah. He has no reason to worry about your feelings, but he says it like, I love the fans here. Yeah. So, I don't buy that for a second that players don't want to come to Vancouver because of that, because of that reason. On
the note of the fan base, then, what is your temperature gauge if Elias Pettersson signs an offer sheet tomorrow?
If like in terms
how do you
of
think the fans are going to react if Elias Pettersson signs an offer sheet to go somewhere else?
Well, hopefully. Well, here's the thing, right? I am sure if Elias Pettersson, we don't know for sure if he's going to sign an offer sheet. The Canucks are apparently worried about it. Yes. Like they're worried enough about it that it's a thing.
That it's public.
That it's possible. Yeah, it's public knowledge that they're worried. They have just freed up a bunch of money off their books, so it's a lot less of a worry today than it was, say, yesterday. But even if he does, let's say for all intents and purposes he does, there is no reason that there's no chance in hell that they don't match. That's a guarantee. If the Canucks, I would be stunned to see the Canucks go, wow, that's too rich for my blood. Here you go.
They would never.
They could straight up a team could straight up give Elias Pettersson a max contract, paying him more than Connor McDavid, and the Canucks would still probably not go, oh well, we can't. That's too much money for us. See you later. They're not going to do that. They're going to re-sign. They're going to just be like, well, we'll match it. They just will. Yeah. It'll just will happen.
And hopefully, the Schmidt trade makes that a lot easier too, right?
Yeah, it makes
now that they have $6 million available, the threat.
Hell, it makes it much easier.
Way less.
It makes it much easier that they'll just re-sign him right now and won't even have to worry about it. Yeah. It's just there are some teams. I'm sure. And hey, look, it's the same thing like the joke that we had about Ovechkin, about the Kraken asking about Ovechkin. If you're a team, that has cap space, you're going to call and ask if Elias Pettersson wants an offer sheet. You're going to do your due diligence to ask. Mm-hmm. You'd be silly not to, but. I don't think it's gonna. I don't think even if he does sign, there are far worse players to overspend on than Elias Pettersson. He's a guaranteed,
he's pretty good
generational center. You take him. You absolutely take him. He is going to be much better than last year. Than his bad luck last year indicated. They're just going to make it happen. I am not worried in the slightest, even if he does sign an offer sheet, that won't get matched immediately. Yeah. And if that messes with to an extent, like I said it before, this was obviously before the Schmidt trade as well. It's if you were seriously worried about it, there were things you could have done to not worry about it. And that goes back to even last season and how you've handled a lot of different things in the way your cap space has gone over the last few years, if you were actually all that worried about it. Now they're in a position where it's not going to be as big a deal. I think they'll probably just end up getting the contract done beforehand. I saw people already panicking about him changing his profile picture on Instagram or Twitter.
That is some serious posturing from him to freak everybody out. That rules.
I'll say that's good. That's smart negotiating, really. Yeah. In the sense of hey, I don't have to be married to this team. I'm going to put on a picture of me on my summer vacation, and I think he's in Greece or something, or at least he was.
In Mykonos.
I want to go to Greece. Greece looks nice. I've heard good things. That's good. That's smart negotiating in the sense of hey, if you're not going to give me what I want, I could go other places. It's not out of my hands to go there. Yeah. But I don't, at the end of the day, I think they'll get it done. I think they'll absolutely get it done. And same thing goes for Hughes. I think Hughes they'll get Hughes done as well. Like, again, you would be silly to try and like bog it down to semantics with those two. You would be, if you were, I think this was Rick Dollywell saying this on the show today, even was like, if you're $500,000 off, you just give it to him. Yeah. Like, you just give them the money. These are the two players you don't just go, well, you're not going to meet our demands. We're going to set a hard line in the sand right here, and if that means $500,000, and if you're doing that, you're being stupid, and you're not. And if that means you have to throw,
if you have to throw like McEwen on like waivers and you lose them, like, oh well.
Oh,
you
no.
still signed Hughes.
How will we ever replace that as opposed to instead of Elias Pettersson, right? Like, but if you're a couple minutes, you just make it happen. They're going to make it happen. I'm not worried at all.
Yeah. On top of Pettersson, though, like they still need to flesh out like an entire roster. Like, they still do need
that is the biggest
that defense corps. Like they've already talked about how like right shot defenders are like really hard to find. Travis Hamonic is apparently like walking to free agency and testing the waters. There aren't that many available. It's going to be a feeding frenzy tomorrow on the 28th when like all these guys are loose. They might end up spending a lot of money.
Luke Schenn covers it slightly. Like, that's a good, I would say.
That's a good third pair guy.
I don't know if he's necessarily an upgrade on Hamonic. Like, I would have to look at the numbers. Like,
no, he's not at all.
No? Okay. Well, either way, like, I would say maybe
he'd be a perfectly fine third pair. And he'd be a great,
good.
Like,
that's fine.
Like a good partner to like shepherd like Rathbone along, because Rathbone, as we already said, he had no chemistry with Myers. So stick him with Schenn and then find a much better first pairing right shot defenseman to play with.
And you're gonna have to, and you're probably gonna have to put OEL with Myers, so you have to have that lineup there. And so you're basically looking right now. You're looking for someone specifically to play with Hughes. You need a player who can fit that. I know they were interested in Adam Larson for a bit. That was the talking point. I believe Larson is going. Well, sorry, we know this already. He went to the Kraken. He signed with the Kraken. But like, that's the kind of the mold that they're looking for, is somebody who's not going to be like, who's a sturdy stay-at-home defenseman that will complement, Quinn Hughes when he decides to jump up in the rush to try and make a scoring chance happen. So I don't know who's out there right now. Like, I couldn't give you a name on somebody who might be worth keeping an eye on.
That will be probably what we do on our Friday show when we recap all of the free agency moves that the Canucks make, because like we said, they're pretty much in tight to try and re-sign Jason Dickinson, Hughes, and Pettersson, and then a bunch of AHL guys to flesh out the Abbotsford team. There was a couple guys.
We should talk about Jason Dickinson. Like, what do you think he's signing for if we're getting him? Like, I don't know if we talked about this on the last show too much, just because it was kind of, I think, right in line with everything else. His last contract, he had a 1.5. You're probably looking at 2.5 maybe, depending on how much term they give him. Like, it depends on what they view him as, right? Like, if they think he's worth like a 3-year deal, maybe you can squeeze the number down a bit. Yeah, he's only 26, so his upside is definitely still in front of him. You could theoretically give him hopefully you're not just giving him the Beagle contract again, where it's like 3 years at $3 million. That's too much. They're better off in this case. This is a good case example of, if you can bring the number down and get more term by giving more term, that's the way to look. You got to try and go, okay, we're going to give you, say, I don't know. Yeah. Maybe close to like no more than maybe like 2.5, 275, maybe at most. And you go, okay, but we'll bring it down. But if you are willing to extend it out for longer, we'll give you a little bit more money to tie in, like, to bring it down, sort of thing, or like give you more money in the short term kind of thing. It's up to you. It's up to, depending on what their camp is looking for. I don't think they'll have too hard a time getting that negotiation done, just as long as they prioritize Hughes and Pettersson first. Like, you got to get that one done first. That's the main, that's the way they should be looking at this. And there's already been concern that that's not. So
I was going to say, like, how many things have been put ahead of re-signing Pettersson Hughes so far? Like, Tanner Pearson was prioritized first, and Thatcher Demko was,
which makes sense. Like, that one was fair. I'll give him a wash on that one.
Done that, like the Pearson one especially did not.
That was the weird one.
Like, I would have been, like, as soon as the playoffs ended last year, I'd have been negotiating with their agents to try and get them on a new deal before they could have this season. Like,
I mean,
you needed that locked away, but they obviously had
in a way,
concerns, basically.
In a way, they almost, like, to a certain extent, just because of how tough Pettersson's year was, they might have done themselves slightly accidentally help just because he had a tougher year to get less money for Pettersson. But even still, you should have done it first. It should be your prime concern rather than this. I'm sure they tried to get it done last year, but I think both of their agents knew at the time, like,
they're like,
we'll
circle back
bring
on
that.
this.
They're going to bring that number. There were probably the odds on them bringing that number up and getting a better contract if they waited a year was probably better. It's not like with say McDavid, for example. Like, I think McDavid's one of the few. McDavid and Matthews are two of, like, the few, like, high picks that have signed early just because they were going to get the max contract regardless. So it didn't really matter that they wait. There was no point in waiting. They knew they were going to get whatever they wanted. So you just got it done for the certainty of it all. Yeah. Whereas with Pettersson and Hughes, there was still a potential chance that they were going to bring that number up with time. I see where they went there, but now you're looking at a situation where, okay, you definitely need to make this your number one concern. If you're looking for free agents to fill your roster, specifically like big names and big fish out there again, then your priorities are in the wrong spot. I don't think we're going to have to worry about that this time. Hopefully somebody has thrown Jim Benning's phone into False Creek by now. Like, that's
well, they are going to have to hit
that, and you just chuck it out the window. It's not a far throw from the window.
You probably hit it
to False Creek. You could probably get it close to at least
skip towards
outside the Concord Pacific Presentation Center. You can get it there. You can give it a good chuck. Yeah. That's what you got to do. That's what you got to do.
Yeah, they are going to be relying pretty heavily on free agency.
Walk all out of area numbers. That's what you do. That's what you do. All out of area numbers.
They're going to be relying heavily on free agency because they didn't qualify Jace Howerluck, Mark Michaelis, or a bunch of other guys. Brogan Rafferty and Jalen Chatfield are apparently moving on to free agency.
So does any of that surprise you as somebody who's covered those guys for such a long period of time? Like,
not at all.
Does any of this surprise you, or is any of this a huge miss?
Mark Michaelis, I figured they would have given a chance to play in Abbotsford just to see if he can actually be anything. He's older, but like at least give him like a year in the league that he might actually succeed in. He was clearly not like NHL ready or capable, but he had no choice because they would have had to put him on waivers to send him to the AHL, and I don't think they wanted to risk it for some reason.
At the time,
Brogan Rafferty, that one, I mean, that's frustrating because apparently Arizona was trying to trade for him last offseason, and they said no. And then, they give him one game. He has a really rough first couple shifts and basically spends the entire season on the taxi squad. He plays a single game in a calendar year. He didn't really light the world on fire at either the return to play camp before they went to the playoff bubble last year, and he didn't really light the camp on fire at this year's training camp. So it's like, I can kind of see where they're coming from, where they're like, we need this older prospect to really define and show himself that he can be an NHL player. And I mean, we know how much this team operates in small sample sizes. They make a lot of their draft decisions based on tournaments. They don't really go with large sample sizes. So it makes sense that one bad game kind of colored their perception of him. They've done it before. I think they did it with Philip Larson or whoever it was they traded for from Vegas. They gave him one game and then immediately flipped him to Texas or Dallas or something like that.
Oh, it was really quick. That was I don't remember. Game.
Oh no, they flipped Larson to Vegas for Brendan Leipzig after one game.
I remember that, yeah.
And so I understand why Brogan Rafferty and his agent would be like, we don't even want to talk to the Canucks after this fucking bullshit year. We wasted our entire year playing a single game and practicing. And this is kind of what I was complaining about earlier this season, or not complaining about, but like criticizing, was like, players do need to play. You can't just bench them the entire year. Like, they do need games. All the practice time in the world doesn't really mean much if you're not actually utilizing it in games. And
it's not like they were hurting for. It's not like they were it's not like they had far too much defensive depth to make a spot for him. It was
the guy he was battling was Jalen Chatfield, and I would argue that their defensive prowess is pretty much equal, except Brogan Rafferty has a scoring touch that Chatfield does not. And, Chatfield came in, he played, I'd say, above his ability, and above his ability meant that he got destroyed against Toronto when they played him, and it kind of killed any opportunity or momentum he may have generated. He looked pretty good when he first started, but I mean, that's adrenaline pumping through him. It's his first couple NHL games, and he played pretty well, like damn well for a debuting player at his age. You can find these guys in the OHL or WHL. You just got to be able to scout them. They don't really lose much by not re-signing Chatfield or Rafferty. It's just kind of the opportunity cost lost on Rafferty because they did have teams asking about him last offseason after his unreal production in the AHL, because obviously the team or any competing team will see he only played one game. All they have to do is watch that one game, see his shifts, and go, oh, I see why they benched him and didn't play him again. He's no good at the NHL level, so his value is completely shot. He'll probably get a shot in a California team somewhere on an AHL squad and do completely fine. Maybe he gets a shot in LA. Who knows?
Yeah.
But
there's a lot of players in that category. Like that one, I think Mitch Elliott was part of that group as well. Him and Josh Tevez, I think, is the last one.
Tevez was the other one. Tevez was the other one, but he had great wheels, but he honestly wasn't a good player. Even at the AHL level,
he's still under contract, is he not? Is he not under?
No, his deal's done. He's probably in UFA. But he's an actual UFA. But because I guess I don't know.
I don't know.
He doesn't really care that he's moving on, so he's not like Rafferty's story is out there because his agent was like, "Yeah, we're not talking to the Canucks."
Yeah, like straight up. It wasn't even even if the Canucks wanted them, they're like, nope, not interested. Yeah. It's like you get it to a certain point, like you get it to an extent, like it's time, like move on. I'm sure some people will get very concerned, will get very upset about it. Cause I know there were a lot of people who were really like, oh, this guy's an NHL defenseman someday. Like had people were penciling him in.
That. I saw a lot of comments saying, it doesn't matter that Schmidt's gone because Rafferty and Chatfield are waiting in the wings. And it took a lot, it took a lot in me to not reply and be like, did you watch them play? Yeah. These guys are not proven NHL caliber defenders who can.
They're fine. They'll do in a pinch. But they're not regulars. They're not regulars.
Yes. So from an asset standpoint, it sucks that some of these guys die on the vine. It's really tough look because the team didn't do any acquisitions out of the NCAA at the end of this year. No. So they're going to be.
It's kind of hard to. They're going to be really hockey out of them.
Yeah, it's true, but they're going to be really up against it to round out their Abbotsford team because of it. I thought Mitch Elliott would have been fine to bring back because he's cheap as shit, and at least on an AHL deal, like you're really not no one's no one's clamoring for Mitch Elliott. You can afford to bring him back.
And good thing to remember, though, as well at the time for anyone listening is just because they didn't qualify these guys doesn't mean they couldn't potentially still re-sign them. Like that's happened before. I think recently.
Oh my God.
I think recently they circled back on somebody. I am hoping you didn't just stumble onto crazy news or something.
I did. Oh dear. We're gonna actually close out the show with this because this is wild.
Oh,
this has nothing to do with the Canucks.
Oh, well,
but we're
hold on here. I did want to ask you beforehand, before you get to the crazy news.
Sure. Okay. Go look it up next. I want to see your facial reaction. Okay. Sure. So you ask your question first.
Sure. It's potentially possible that these guys that they did not qualify, they could still come back to and sign at a cheaper rate just than what their qualification number was. Is there anybody on this list of these guys? So Jace Howerluck, Mark Michaelis, Jake Keeley, Petrus Palmeau, Mitch Elliott. Is there any one of these players that you could see potentially it being beneficial for them to come back to without the qualification in place and possibly bringing back in a different sort of deal?
I think you could I think you could probably bring back Mitch Elliott on an AHL contract. I think he showed enough in his underlying numbers that could prove that he'd be actually a pretty good power play guy and a decent third pair specialty role, kind of like the Gagne of defense. where he doesn't really play a lot of minutes, but when he does, it's either on the PK, power play, or prescribed 5v5. That's fine, especially at the AHL level when they're getting paid like $70,000 a year only. That's fine. Yeah. Every other guy, Jake Kiley was one of their worst goaltenders. He does not have a good glove. His positioning is just atrocious. He would constantly throw himself 5 feet out of the crease and have to scramble back into the net to try and make a save. Just looked lost and swimming half the time. Mark Michaelis, I would like to see them try and sign him to like a 2-way deal that gets him in the AHL for like a season, but
yeah,
I just don't know if I can tell, like with the small sample size thing, that they saw 15 games of Michaelis and were like, we've seen enough. We don't need him. We can get him anywhere if we want. That's like the type of mindset that they have, right?
Yeah, especially after 1 year.
Howard will probably get an opportunity somewhere else.
Howard Luck is the one I want out of that group that I'm most interested in, just because he was as far as NHL depth is concerned, he was pretty good for that specific role. Like I wouldn't want to see him in 82 times a year. That's when you run into that. If he's playing 82 games a year, that's a problem. But if you're bringing him in, say, as your 13th forward and your healthy scratch sometime, like as your healthy scratch and your just dependency if somebody goes down with an injury, I like Howard Luck. He filled the role. He worked hard every shift. His faces that he'd make in photos were quite funny and enjoyable because he put the effort in. Like the effort was clearly there and it was clicking for him by the end of the season. Like he was actually finding decent success from a scoring standpoint to a degree. I wouldn't mind them keeping him somehow as like depth. I wouldn't mind him as a 13th forward if he's in your healthy scratch section. Like that's not bad. That's not a bad spot to put him if you can get him.
It's better than Zach McEwen, arguably, who kind of played himself off the lineup. I think he lost the trust of Travis Green. They didn't really know what to do with him. He wasn't really offering much in general in terms of scoring or pretty much defensively. So like it was kind of like a what do we do with him? We can't lose him on waivers, so he's just a guy. Howard Luck at least kind of gave you a bit of both. I would kind of want to bring him back because like why not? But at his age, I might be like, instead of spending the extra dough to get Howard Luck in, why don't we test out Will Lockwood and see if he can be Howard Luck for cheaper? And then if he is, then we bring him along slowly. His next contract is, they do the Gaudette thing where they give him a 1-year deal at a 10% increase, another 1-year deal and a 10% increase, and then see what we do with him, or we flip him for assets. Otherwise, what's the sense in re-signing a Howard Luck who's proven, but you know what he is at this point, but it's going to cost you an extra $350,000 or $700,000 a year to get what you know, rather than cheap out and see what you can get.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's kind of where I'd be at with that. I have a feeling, like based on this lineup, like Will Lockwood actually fits in very well with the construction of this team. Like I have a feeling,
you see him on like a fourth line kind of thing.
I can easily see him on a fourth line with like Tyler Mott and whoever it is assigned to be the fourth line.
That would be the most cost-effective thing to do. And
it would be cost-effective
probably
and
better
a lot
than
of energy. That's a line that could score, and then it would have speed. Just those two alone is speed and scoring and tenacity, which is
you definitely
would be great.
You definitely need someone who's a little bit like more defensively minded. If that's like the fourth line you're going to go with, you're definitely going to need somebody who's a little bit of a back, the just in case group guy. But yeah, that's not a bad line at all. Like that looks decent for a fourth line. It's probably it's the most cost effective. It's the best asset management wise, probably. Yeah, I don't mind that at all. I would like to see who they put on the wing with them, but yeah, that's a decent looking. I could definitely get behind that as a decent looking at that forward core. It's just a matter of can they get the defense sorted out, and can they find the right backup for Demko, and that's what's going to be coming up in the next couple days here, the next week or so.
On that note, we've pretty much covered all our bases of Canucks news. There was a lot, and by the time you finish or start listening to this episode, it's probably entirely out of date. But we've actually got some breaking news to close out our show, because I want to see Lachlan's reaction to this. I'm hoping he didn't spoil it for himself while he lost internet.
Well,
Elliot Friedman via Emily Kaplan, Brent Seabrook his contract has been traded to Tampa Bay for Tyler Johnson in a second. Which
what? God damn it! Stop letting teams get away with this.
I don't know why.
How does Tampa keep getting away with this?
Tampa's three-peating, baby. That's the prediction right now. Tampa's
Good
three-peating.
Lord. Oh my God. Like, they're going to have Seabrook on LTIR the whole time. Brent Seabrook, winningest Blackhawks from that decade, from that era. Like, geez.
From that awful.
Not that we want. Yeah,
not that we want.
I was going to say, not that we want any good things for that group right now. But like, yeah. Oh my God. That, of course they did. Like, I am both stunned, but also like, of course they figured that out. Of course they made that happen. That's exactly
it was going to happen. That's the thing. Everyone knew it was going to happen. They were going to like all the talk after the playoffs was like, this team's getting blown up. It's not going to be the same. And I was like,
so far they've lost Tyler.
They're going to lose nobody, and they're going to make it
Andre Palat, and that's it. Like that's it. That's really it. They might still lose some more before like I don't know what their UFA situation looks like, but
I don't think there's anybody.
They can't.
It's like nothing.
They can't keep getting away with this.
They can't keep getting away.
Away with this. Jesus.
Anyways, on that note, folks, thank you so much for tuning into this actual Canucks news episode. We don't usually get those.
No.
As always, you can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, Amazon, Stitcher, Overcast, and a bunch of other shit. We also have a YouTube channel where you can see our pretty faces and my tattered rags of a shirt that I wore this to work it's inside out, so that's very cool.
Well done. We're getting him some real CreaseCast merch soon.
Eventually,
we're gonna change his wardrobe entirely. It's gonna be like that show, Queer Eye. It's great. Queer Eye is a great show.
Please, if you're so kind, rate, like, and subscribe to our channels. Give us 5 stars and, leave us reviews. We appreciate them. We appreciate the comments very much. And as always, we have our Patreon where we have $1 and $5 tiers. Subscribe to our content. Lachlan's always churning out written words on there all the time. That's patreon.com/CreaseCast. As always, I'm sure you're so tired of hearing me say this, but I am Cody Sievertson. You can follow me on Twitter at Cody Sievertson. You can also follow my website at cometsharvest.com. Bookmark it now before I change the name because it's probably going to be something really crappy and not clever, and you're going to lose it. So just do it now. Lachlan, where can the fine folks find you?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Lach and the Crease. And you can also find me on my writing stuff at lachandthecrease.com, where I post articles from time to time. I'm sure I will have some sort of blog going tomorrow. Something just going over literally everything we've covered here, plus whatever new news comes up over the next free agency period. Because man, it's going to be just an absolute mess for the next week or so.
Yeah, we're gonna we thought our notes for this episode were really scattered, and trying to piece together a narrative of how to discuss it all was going to be difficult. I have a feeling tomorrow is just going to be fucking nuts. It's going to be
even weirder.
There was a lot of news dropping immediately prior to day one of the draft. And it was just bing, bang, boom, huge trade after huge trade after huge trade. And now we're going to get into everyone's scrambling for the seldom free agents that there are, and prices are going to get fucking jacked through the roof. It's going to be
wild.
Pure chaos. We're going to have your summary of free agency day and whatever the Canucks think of doing over the next couple of days. Thanks for listening, folks. We'll catch you again Saturday afternoon when the Friday episode gets posted. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Bye.
Bye.